Good evening, Mr. Mayor. How are you? Good. Can you see me? Not that you care. Good. Okay. Well, we were asked to come and give an update to the council, and we're happy to do that, and in this workshop meeting. And I thought I would just kind of give a little update on what's transpired. We last met, I believe, on March the 5th of 2020, and gave an update at that time, and had some new ideas about how to treat State Highway 24, and of course there'd been a lot of discussion in the community about the reimagined commerce plan and roundabouts, et cetera, and so we began to look at alternatives to that and trying to look at some traffic calming signalization as one of the options. Also looked at various other options like overpasses and underpasses and that. And I think we went over all of that with the members of the council at that time, just to give you an update on what had been considered. We started the process really looking at reimagined commerce because that was what was adopted by the council and the university, and then we moved on from that, and what we presented to you in March of last year has largely not changed with respect to State Highway 24. We presented some options to you last March for Culver, State Highway 11, with probably the recommended option being to put some medians in, at least going from the intersection with 24 going east, and that we would design those and look at how far we could go going east. And so that's what we've worked on. We've tried to refine that. Also during the course of the year, even though a lot of things were shut down, the work continued. And we during that time entered into a contract, Freeze and Nichols did, with a survey firm, and to get surveys done and ownership maps done so that we'd know exactly where property lines were, and then begin to look at how the project would fit within the existing right-of-way. And that was real important because we hope that this project can be done with almost no environmental impact and without the need for right-of-way and fairly minimal utility relocation, because those are all costs that Hunt County either has to take care of in full or at least partially. So so that's really been the plan that we've worked on. We also continued to work with the university after your meeting on March 5th. I think the consensus of the council seemed to be that the median approach on Culver would be a good idea. The idea of the medians was to to give people crossing Culver a safe refuge in the middle of Culver, in that middle lane, so to speak, with a raised median, so that they only have to cross 2 lanes before they reach a safe refuge, and then cross 2 more lanes. So that was the idea there, and we looked at some challenges with respect to where the left turn lanes would be, and Wayne Hart, who I was here last year and made the presentation, is here with me tonight, and he'll go through some of those, because one of the things we were trying to do was deal with the offsets of the north-south streets where they intersect with Culver. So the other thing that after the meeting in March, had a meeting with Dr. Rudin to confirm with him that the median approach on Culver was something that would be good with the university, and so he affirmed that, and we've since had one additional meeting with him about a month or so ago, and kind of reconfirmed everything. So we think tonight would be an appropriate time for us to just bring you up to date. Those of you who were here for the meeting last year will see slides for the most part that you've seen before. We have taken into account the fact that the university plans to build a welcome center there at the intersection of 24 by the music building, at the intersection of 24 and University. And so we've taken that into account, and some of the slides that Wayne will show you will show you how that has taken place. The traffic counts seem to also indicate that a third signal could be put on 24. So you could have one at Live Oak, one at Culver, and then one at University. And I think from the outset, the real goal has been, how do we slow traffic? And so that's been one of the things we've really looked at and asked Fries and Nichols to study, and their approach to that has been that with 3 sets of signals that will slow traffic with an urban profile, curb and gutter, instead of the bar ditches, rural profile that you have now, that will slow traffic. And then eventually, if some landscaping can be done, then that will probably cause traffic to slow down further. So so that just kind of gives you an update. Wayne's going to go over the slides, and most of them, a lot of them you'll recognize, and we'll be glad to answer any questions that you have at the end of his presentation.
All right, while Wayne's coming up, council, just want to remind you, just to improve the ability for mayor and others to hear when you speak or have questions, let's make sure we use our microphones. I'm going to go ahead and share the screen so that the mayor can see the presentation as well. So, Wayne, feel free.
Okay. Hi, I'm Wayne Hart, working for Fries and Nichols, a consulting firm based in Fort Worth, Texas, and we've been helping the county really a collaboration with the county and TxDOT and of course the city and TAMUC to advance this project and really get all the stakeholders on board, pulling in the same direction. So the first slide here that we have is Highway 24. Left to right would be south to north. So the intersecting street you see on the left side, that's Culver Street. And then working north, you can see University Avenue is the intersection 2/3 of the way to Live Oak Street. And also want to point out that there's the Hawk pedestrian crossing. It doesn't show up very well. There it is right there. So so these 4 elements as the additional signal at University, and then with the Hawk pedestrian signal, would provide traffic control devices that would serve to slow the traffic as they make their way through. Now, so what we're showing here is the reimagined commerce, some of the reimagined commerce concepts with improvements along the east side frontage road that would serve to provide parking for the university, provide a landscaped, shaded, pedestrian environment, and then that additional landscaping would, create a sense of place that would also, influence traffic. The TxDOT project that we're currently developing would be improvements along the main lanes. So, but what's important here is that whatever we do in the main lanes in terms of narrowing the lanes, realigning them, working with the intersections, is that it's ultimately going to be compatible with the frontage road improvements, which would be a separate project. One of the things I wanted to point out here, one of our recent discussions includes the location of the Hawk signal. We understand that the dormitories that they serve on the west side of 24, are going to be decommissioned at some point. We don't really have a timeline on that, or at least I'm not aware of one. But that Hawk signal would then better serve pedestrian demand if it would move to the south, perhaps halfway between Culver Street and University Avenue. And it would serve the development of the athletic facilities on the campus on that side of Highway 24, and also provide a more even spacing between the signal control devices. So you'd have Culver, and then evenly spaced between Culver and University, you'd have the Hawk crosswalk, the University intersection with the new signal, and then of course Live Oak at the north end. So it provides a balanced approach to locating traffic control that would serve to calm traffic. Make sure I'm right here. Okay, so one of the things that we've done in the last several months is we did obtain topographic and boundary survey so that we could identify more precisely where the TxDOT right-of-way begins and ends. And because the concepts that we were developing, we used the best information we had at the time, but now we have, boots on the ground, surveyed boundaries. And so what we've essentially found is that our initial assumptions, have proved out to be valid. And so what we're showing here is essentially working from the west side to the east, that would be left to right. We're showing the existing frontage road, the new northbound and southbound main lanes. You'll notice those are curb and gutter, okay? So one of the traffic calming elements that is part of this plan would be to remove the wide shoulders, introduce a curb and gutter, more of an urban section, sort of a necking down of the roadway, because those wide lanes and wide shoulders also serve to create an environment that really encourages higher speed. So the narrower roadway widths, but still wide enough to accommodate the truck traffic, in combination with the evenly spaced traffic control at the signals, is really going to help get us to that more calmed traffic. One of the things in looking at the right-of-way width is currently 300 feet of right-of-way, and when we put this footprint on the right-of-way width template, we were interested in to see, obviously, how things would fit between the northbound main lanes and that right-of-way boundary. And so essentially, the concepts with the back-in parking on both sides of the east frontage road fits within that 100 feet or so between the main lanes and the right-of-way line. One of the sort of caveats with that is, to the extent that the pathway on the east side is able to meander and be landscaped with shade trees, to the extent that we want a wide landscape width and a meandering pathway, some of those improvements would be on the university side, but the parking and the frontage road improvements and those landscape islands would essentially fit. So that was important to us to make sure that whatever we're planning for the main lanes is compatible with that ultimate improvements along the frontage road, which, like I mentioned, that would essentially be a separate project from the DOT project. Here we're just showing sort of the existing conditions, working from Culver Street on the left. We're showing the Hawk Signal and Live Oak Street. And the intersections, we really want to maximize the pedestrian safety. That includes creating as a comfortable an environment as possible for pedestrians to use the pedestrian signals and create the channelization that sort of channelizes traffic. The channelized islands create pedestrian refuge. The removing the shoulders from the roadway shorten the pedestrian crossing lengths, and so we can really improve what's out there today by implementing those features. As well, you can see some colored, and this would typically be a stamped brick sidewalk or crosswalks through the intersection. Some of the stamped pavement applications, TxDOT is comfortable with them, and you can hardly tell them from real brick. So it's a neat little application that enhances the aesthetics, emphasizes that this is an intersection worthy of pedestrians, and just creates that environment, urban type environment that we're looking for. I think I'm stuck here. Can you advance the screen, Howdy, on your end? Okay. Here again, we're showing some of another option for stamping and coloring the entire intersection with some contrast with the crosswalks. Again, I mentioned shortening the pedestrian crossing distances, providing refuge islands, and making this intersection as comfortable for pedestrians as it is for vehicles. Some of the other traffic calming elements that we've talked about just as ideas would be on the approaches to Culver Street from the south and Live Oak Street from the north. I know there's some monuments for the City of Commerce and TAMUC approaching from the south, but just to expand on that thought, just to sort of frame, you're in the Commerce, you're in a university environment, just let the motorists know that they've arrived someplace that warrants greater attention than from where they've come from. Okay, so next thing we're going to talk about here is on Highway 11. Currently, Highway 11 from Highway 24 to the east along the campus, we have a 5-lane section with 12-foot inside travel lanes, 13-foot outside travel lanes, and a center turn lane. And so in implementing a median through this area, we needed to look at where we can get this room to place a raised median without rebuilding the curb lines along the outside, because that gets very expensive. It gets into storm drain systems and utilities. And so if implementing a median meant reconstructing the border curbs along the outside, it would become a project that, would be very difficult for us to fund with the funding that's been allocated. So in looking at this, we were able to gain an additional 4 feet by narrowing the outside 13-foot lane to 12 and the inside 12-foot lane to 11. That gets on each side. That gets us a 16-foot wide median, which is, essentially what TxDOT is looking for in terms of providing left turns, but then also a raised concrete separator to provide a buffer between the turn lane and the adjacent opposite direction through lane. And this I think really, I don't think we lose anything by narrowing these lanes because, again, the narrower lanes encourage slower travel speeds. The 12-foot outside lane is certainly adequate to accommodate any truck traffic. This is just another graphic showing the, where we have left turn lanes, we can implement a 12-foot left turn and then a 3 or 4 foot wide concrete traffic separator you see there. So the next question becomes, okay, we have a raised median, we've got to provide left turns, and we try and provide the full median openings where, we have intersecting side streets. One of the challenges, that we're facing along this section of Highway 11 is that the side streets don't line up with each other. And so we've been working on that, looking at what the possibilities might be. Here you can see on the south side of Highway 11, we are proposing and have been in conversations with the university about realigning West Neal Street so that access to the property to the south could be maintained at a full median opening, and it works well realigning with West Neal on the north side. The university owns that property on the south side, and we've been in conversations with them, and they're supportive. Can you go to the next slide? Howdy, you might have a battery problem here. Okay, so this is a view zoomed out a little bit. So you can see again the West Neal Street realignment, and the median openings have to be spaced far enough so that we have adequate left turn lane deceleration and some vehicle storage. So when those left turn lanes get too short, they're not of much value. So there's a certain spacing that we need, at the median openings. The next median opening would be at Bodark Street. And again, the side streets they don't line up. Now it happens that the property just east of Bodark Street on the north side, the university owns that property, as I understand, and they do take truck deliveries, through Bodark Street, and so we're proposing and talking to the university about the possibility of realigning Bodark Street to accommodate that next median opening to the north. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So we did look at some alternatives. The alternative on the left side is the one we just talked about, where we take advantage of those two parcels and put a reverse curve in there and get that realignment at the median opening. We did look at the next alternative in the center of the screen, just extending Bodark Street through those parcels. The feedback we received on that is that would be more difficult for trucks to navigate, to take a left turn and then another right turn to get back onto Bodark Street. The alternative on the right side would be just a left turn in. It would be an eastbound to northbound left turn into Bodark Street, so you wouldn't have the benefit of a full median opening there. But it's just sort of another idea. But I think where we're landing on this is the first alternative on the left side, just that realignment of Bodark Street. The next location working north from Bodark Street is Monroe Street. And the Berkshire's grocery store, they only have access on Highway 11. So if we put a median in front of their two driveways, there would be no left turn access out of the Berkshires or access at all coming from the east. So the idea here, the university owns the parcel east of the Berkshires, and in order to make this work, we could provide another connection from Monroe Street. We understand the university's been talking to Berkshires about this idea, and understand that they're not opposed to it in concept. They've asked that some more detailed drawings are provided, but I think that's good news that they appear to be supportive of the concept. Monroe Street is a signalized intersection, so it doesn't damage their access. If anything, you could argue they will end with better access than they have today with the traffic signal. They do have sort of a curbside drive-through operation that you can see. Just there's a little island there showing just on the east side of the building with a little turnaround loop. And so that's one of the things we want to make sure, and the Berkshires, will be interested in, is to maintain the operation of that curbside pickup. As we looked east to continue the median, and mind you, we've essentially determined that we don't really have the budget to go all the way to Maple Street or to the schools. But we did look at it in concept. We found some problems if we were to try and implement that. The Dollar General, would lose left turn access because of the median opening at Royal Lane. They would be just too close to provide another one. And then looking east some more. That self-storage facility only has access off of Culver Street, and so they would be adversely impacted as well. And then the Churchill Apartments as well. They only have a driveway. They don't have access off of a side street. So that would have to be reconfigured. And so we just started exceeding, the scope and, the ability to keep within the funding and, be more pragmatic about what we can actually accomplish. The schools, I think the schools, they probably have some master plan that would need to be accommodated in any idea like this. We do have, wanted to show you sort of the budget, the funding commitments to the project. This is a combination of federal, state, and local funding. Typically there's a state match of, I don't know, it's 10 or 20% of the federal funding that is obtained through the NCT cog. So essentially our construction funding is $4.9 million, which, you know, we're gonna stretch that as far as we can possibly and get the highest value return on that funding. Here I'm showing a timeline of, you know, what has to happen to implement the project. We're receiving all our topographic and boundary surveys this month, and then over the next couple of months we're going to have some more refined concepts to meet with TxDOT about. They've been included in all the meetings and the coordination on a conceptual level. When we start getting into detailed design, we want to make sure that we're talking to them, so we're not trying to implement something that they simply won't approve. The design schematic is really sort of a 30 or 40% design, and then is some environmental clearance that, you know, we'll have to do environmental investigations. It's really the NEPA process that's required to receive the federal funding. So we don't anticipate any big environmental issues, but nonetheless it is a process that requires a lot of data collection and sort of, I'll call it checking the boxes to make sure that we're cleared for the federal funding. And then we're anticipating in October to have a public meeting. The public involvement process is part of obtaining the environmental clearance for the project. And then right around that time we'll begin final development of the contract plans and specifications that would be that TxDOT would put out for contractor bidding. The public hearing opportunity is you know, if you don't have typically on these types of projects, we don't have a formal public hearing, but to comply with the environmental NEPA process, there's simply an opportunity for public hearing. And if somebody, you know, didn't have a chance to attend the public meeting, or, you know, if there's enough folks in the public that want a hearing, then we afford that opportunity. If not, we simply document that an opportunity was provided. But that first public meeting is going to be really important to get the community involved in that, so that we have the sort of the buy-in moving forward, and if any comments will be considered and accommodated. So typically that process for environmental clearance, you know, that typically takes around, you know, a 6-month review process, and we'll be developing the final plans and specifications concurrent with that process. Right at about 60 to 80% design plans, we have enough information to notify the utilities that may have to be relocated to accommodate the project. We don't anticipate a lot. Our design is really going to focus on surface improvements as much as possible, and not try and disrupt the stormwater drainage systems. And if we can accomplish that, we anticipate the utility relocation would be a relatively minor feat. And So then the next step would be to just finalize those final design plans, specifications, and provide that to TxDOT, who would then bid the project. So right now the project, is funded for in fiscal year 2023, and we would anticipate a 12-month construction period taking us through, sometime first or second quarter of 2023. One of the things, and I thought we would you might be interested in, would be the some of the coordination with the university. They are developing a plan for a welcome center in front of the music building right there at University Avenue. We're interested in collaborating with them to the extent that it may affect the signalization design at University Avenue. So it's going to be important for us to develop those plans together so that we're compatible with them. They've got, a circulation plan. It looks like a kind of a tight fit there, but there's not a lot of parking. I don't see a lot of parking, but they've, they're working on. They're committed to this site as being the main entrance to the university, and placing a welcome center at this location. This will also, help sort of the overall feel of you're in a university, here's the main entrance, the welcome center. All these things are going to contribute to the traffic calming objective of the project. And you give me the last one there. There we go. I hit it and you hit it. There we go.
I'll let you hit it.
Okay, there it is. Okay, here's just some nice renderings. Looking across from the lake, and then the other view looks like a bird's eye view. I guess that would be looking from the north. So we're committed to working with them and having the city and the university and TxDOT and Hunt County all as partners in this project. And that's about what I had.
Have any questions or comments?
Use your mic, Stephanie.
On Highway 24, when we were talking about, the main lanes, we were at one time talking about they might have to be shifted.
Right.
And they will be shifted, right?
Well, so one of the things that came out of the topographic design and the boundary surveys is we can substantially keep those lanes where they are.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so that was good news.
And
Good.
that's on the image on the screen should demonstrate that. Fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
You step on a cat
I was gonna say grandkid.
at the bottom half of that image. Wayne, correct me if I'm wrong. That's approximately where it is in real time
Yes.
today.
Okay.
And then you
Right.
can take that up, and the lanes will
Right.
stay where they are, but be narrowed a little bit.
Right.
Okay, fantastic. All right, the crossings, like if I'm over on Live Oak in 24, currently, whenever you are in the center, that is a flat surface. We're talking about raising that so that the pedestrians will have a crosswalk there, because whenever you're standing there, people will turn and cut into to the pedestrians. I've been trying to go across there a couple of times. I just won't even go in that direction.
So there's a turning conflict with vehicles, with people waiting to cross.
Because it's flat. So I didn't know if, whenever we were talking about platforms, if there was a platform there now. I mean, will that be in the design?
Are you going to be adding curb and gutter at those intersections?
Yes.
so I think
Yes.
that would accomplish what
That
you're
would
talking about.
accomplish
Right.
it.
Yes.
Good deal.
Yeah.
On the screen, let me, with my arrow, this is the intersection, I'm talking, do you believe you're talking about at Culver,
No, I'm talking about Live Oak.
at Live Oak? Okay,
Mhm.
yeah, then over here, yeah, those are all
Very flat.
flat at grade.
Mm-hmm.
And when you add curb and gutter,
We can raise those.
Okay,
Yep.
good deal.
they'll still hop the curb, but they'll have to mean it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopping the curve, they'll hurt.
No,
your
that's
car,
a
what
good
they-
point. That will
If those intersections are slightly raised, it probably helps slow
Yeah.
people a little bit too,
Mhm.
particularly if they're a different surface.
Yeah, because whenever, I'm not sure whenever this was changed over, I know it's been in the last 20 years, when it was changed, it had a raise and then it was
Okay.
lowered down. And that became an issue there. All right, can you go to the one where he's talking about his time frames,
Yeah.
please? And this is more education for me.
Okay.
'Cause I'm
sure.
definitely not in. Okay, whenever we're talking about environmental evaluation,
Mm-hmm.
explain to me environmental. I mean, are we talking
Okay.
about drainage and all that, or what?
Right. Okay. So the environmental is a kind of a big basket of things. Typically, environmental would include, biological resources like wetlands, impacts to streams,
Mhm.
floodplains, and so there's the physical environment that has to be looked at. Listed species, protected species, habitats. We don't anticipate any of those types of impacts on this project. The other impacts, it becomes an exercise on this type of project because we're staying within the existing right of way. It's becomes a little bit of a check the box, but nonetheless the data has to be collected. Technical reports have to be written and packaged into a summary report that is used to clear the federal funding for the project. The other typical environmental impacts could be noise impacts. So if we were widening a road, even within the existing right-of-way, and it was adjacent to some homes, we'd have to do a noise study. For this project, we're really not doing that. There's also things where there's new right-of-way. There's a social justice component of it, cultural and archaeological resources, hazardous materials.
Okay, that's what I was
yeah.
expecting because having lived in Austin for 20-some
Uh-huh.
years, I mean, I thought that's what you were talking about,
Yeah.
but I didn't know, what this would entail.
Okay.
All right. And then on Highway 11, when we were talking about, and probably we won't ever get to that point, but I mean, whenever
Mhm.
when we get down to Monroe, down to past Washington, we had the issue of our fire trucks come out on Pecan Street. Did we
Okay.
take that into account? And I didn't look to see.
I haven't looked specifically at that issue, but that's something.
Yeah.
All those types of things we want to make sure we're considering.
Yeah, because we
Emergency access.
Because in Washington, that would be our, the streets go across from each other.
Mm-hmm.
Pecan Street is when we'd have to have some kind of, something there for the fire trucks to go
If
back to the east.
D, Wayne, I think it's my understanding that there's,
not even
they're not going to do any design work other than what
Okay,
they've drawn.
good.
Right. Okay.
All right.
What
Right.
does the transition look like from the new design work, say from Monroe
They were gonna go ahead.
going
East.
east? Where, if we're narrowing or curbing, I mean, is it going to still be the same footprint?
Right.
How is it going to transition from that new portion there?
Right. So one of the things that we're featuring here is those outside curb lines will remain the same, and the lanes are narrowed by a foot, but it'll be in such a way you won't really even notice it. The transition's going to be stretched out over 100 feet.
So kind of a gradual.
It'd be very gradual.
Okay.
You wouldn't you wouldn't really notice something change. You're going to notice there's a median more than
Then the
the
narrowing.
narrowing of the lanes.
Stephanie, were you through? The area from Monroe going into Brookshires will, if going across the university lane, if for the entrance to Brookshires, will Monroe be resurfaced from Culver to that
I anticipate that the pavement would be resurfaced and fresh striping.
you would just go ahead and do all of Monroe? Just kidding.
Well, I mean, I'm sorry, from along Culver, where we're changing the lane widths, and where be some construction activity, building the raised curb for the median. You know, we really want to have a fresh surface at the end of it. So
I would suspect that Monroe, since it's not TxDOT right-of-way, would not be part of the
Right.
scope of their work.
Right.
So
So it would just
we
be
would
the
have
new
to-
addition.
we'd have
Right.
to locally fund that.
Okay. You said something about at some point having to move the hawk signals. The hawk signals is there to the entrance. Would that be something that we wait to see what the university?
okay, so there's two hawk signals. There's one on Culver in front of Whitley Hall. That one would remain. We would provide with the median. One of the benefits of the median, there would be some pedestrian refuge that doesn't exist today. But so our plan wouldn't be to move that one. The hawk signal that we're talking about moving would be the one that's just south of University Avenue 124, and we'd move it, approximately halfway between Culver and University, just to provide an even spacing of traffic control devices that would serve to calm the traffic.
Okay. In the funding, when you say I think we call them the monuments, the boulevard, or what, as you enter into this area, is that something that is funded, that would be funded by this?
Those types of things, typically TxDOT looks for local funding on that, because it's not a transportation. It's hard to, as much as they would want to help with that, it's hard for them to make an argument that that's a transportation component. So that would be, although they do, the stamped concrete crosswalks, the curbs and gutters, the improvements for the pedestrian improvements at the intersections, all those things are safety related. The monuments is something that's less likely that they would fund, but it would be, part of an overall implementation concept. But I think that would most likely be, they looked for the university or local funding for that component, that particular component. Yes.
Through TxDOT?
Yeah. There. Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's called. Yeah. There is a funding category for landscape material.
You said that as you're doing this work that is not, I guess it was our water drainage, that it was not going to be disturbed.
Mm-hmm.
The
Stormwater.
stormwater.
Mm-hmm.
Are we adequate with that infrastructure that we have there now? I mean, this may be more for Howdy, because the more concrete that the university lays down, the more we have things running south. And it can and has been an issue further south. I just wonder if that would be looked into, that what is there is adequate, or that may not be you guys, but have we addressed that?
I mean, typically, TxDOT's going to be concerned with the stormwater facilities that serve the roadway. Any off-site improvements, hopefully would be, if there's additional pavement, for example, strategies to limit the amount of additional impervious area or increase storage for stormwater runoff. Those would be opportunities for that development. And then anything that drains off-site to the TxDOT right away, TxDOT's going to be interested in that and most likely make a adjacent property owner demonstrate that they're not increasing flow to the roadway.
I would guess, like, for example, when they build this welcome center, that's going to be a substantial construction with some new parking and some new pavement. I don't believe TxDOT's going to want that additional runoff to go into their right of way, so TxDOT's probably going to encourage them to take that to the lake, because I believe the lake already serves as a stormwater retention anyway. So when they do that new development, I would hope we would be able to see that any additional stormwater developed goes to the lake and not into the TxDOT right away.
Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but when the lake gets full, it goes under the highway, and it comes out between those two halls, between where the old Children's Museum used to be. Is that correct? It goes down that creek?
I haven't seen the plans. I don't know. That's what the mayor says. That's right.
Correct, and then that goes behind Walmart to the river.
Right.
Yeah.
That would be the only place really.
Only place to take it. Yeah.
That would be in effect.
It won't affect us south of Culver.
Right. So it goes down and
On the
turns
east side of
between-
24.
Goes down between the children's, where the Children's Museum was, and the softball field.
Yep.
And turns back south there.
Okay.
That's going to get some runoff through there. But that's probably the only place that's going to be really a big issue.
And there are no sidewalks included in this, is that correct?
We did talk about, I think within the limits of the project, between along Culver, between Highway 24 and Monroe, there would be an opportunity to include sidewalk, fill in gaps within those limits and make them accessible to comply with all the ADA requirements. Would most likely, be a high value thing to include in the project. Beyond Monroe Street, I know there's some gaps in the sidewalks, and that could be something we talk about as we see how the budget comes in as we get further into the detailed design.
I think that is certainly something that,
Mm-hmm.
because it goes out towards the school, it is certainly something that's needed
Yeah.
in that area. Right.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
It's my speculation that based on the amount of funding we have for construction, I think once we get the improvements to the main lanes of 24 nailed down, and then start the improvements to Culver heading to the east, I don't think there's enough funding to get all the way to Monroe. I hope I'm wrong, but the sidewalks that have been looked at would just be between 24 down to Monroe, filling in gaps, because the existing sidewalks that are there are actually in pretty good shape.
Wayne, just one question. We're looking at 24 coming, say, from the hospital. When will the narrowing of the lanes start?
typically we want to get out, the functional part of the intersection is going to include the area where the turn lane transitions start. So we'd want to at least come back that far, and perhaps a couple 100 feet in advance of that, I think would give us an effective result if we were to at least do that much. Yeah, the shoulders would be it'd be a transition, and then we would want to have that curb and gutter established at least within the functional portion of the intersection, which includes where the left and right turn lanes begin.
That was about the same place where you were talking about putting the bollards for the entryway monuments. Well, monuments.
Yeah, some
That's the same transition.
yeah, something in advance of the intersection. So
If they
yeah.
go in, Tony, is the way I understood it.
That would mark the beginning of we're in an urban environment kind of thing. Right. Yeah. You got to look real close. Right there. Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe by the railroad trestle. Or probably not the railroad trestle, but the entrance into the old Walmart, the Brahms.
Okay, that's a little bit further back.
It's 300 feet or 250 feet.
Mm-hmm.
What they've got drawn on the screen doesn't go all the way to the entrance to Brahms. It kind of lines up with Brahms, but it doesn't quite go to that entrance from what they've got drawn on the.
It probably won't go down to the second entrance into Walmart, though.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, we've got some concepts here, but to actually get, detailed design drawings and coordinated with TxDOT, there's going to be, some additional consideration and those types of things are things we could solicit input at the public meetings also.
Any other questions on this end? I think, Mayor, it's kind of back to you.
Appreciate you sharing this with us. We have a lot of people to answer questions from, even before we get to our public meetings, so I appreciate giving us an update. I like the idea of narrowing the lanes on Culver. To me, that makes a lot of sense. It gives a little wider island in the middle. The proposal for 24 accomplishes a great deal of what I thought roundabouts might do, but it would definitely give a person the sense this is not the highway continuing, it is going through a town. And I think that's a well done proposal.
Of course, it's going to have to include some enforcement, too. Just like everybody's going to have to.
Or the signal lights. If the signal lights are set up where it will make them where they can't go through it unless they are at a certain speed. So that'll help with that, controlling it that way.
It will. It sure will. But, just like yesterday, just out of the clear blue, I almost got ran over, and I clocked the truck going through Live Oak, headed towards the next intersection. He was going 63 miles an hour.
That's a normal,
That's a normal.
that's a normal thing.
Coming up, and they just accelerate through it.
Right.
And they do that both ways, and that's just a pinprick of what goes on.
I think that will be also whenever we're talking about the on Live Oak up to the point where you have that train trestle area. I come in that direction almost every day for work, and I know I need to start slowing down. But those trucks, I mean, I watch them, and they are just hauling it, and if that light isn't just right
Mhm.
for them to have to stop, they're going through there pretty fast. But you don't, I mean, it goes from 50 up to 40 right before Brahms,
Mhm.
but there's going to have to be some kind of a major something that's going to keep them from, you know, start telling them they got to start slowing
Mhm.
down there. And I think that'll come up in our public hearings.
Mhm.
Do we
That's
know
just an
at
issue.
this point about the beacon signal there in front of Whitley Hall? Will that still be there?
Yes.
Still be there?
Yes.
I think one of the things that we were hoping for is that there was enough traffic coming out of University to justify that third signal, just
Mhm.
barely,
Right. It's just.
But I think we have a better case with that becoming a visitor center also there, so that's gonna add traffic. And I really think having that third signal is gonna really make a difference. That plus the narrowing, the curb and gutter, all that, I think it's just, you know, it'd be a whole different atmosphere than what you have now.
When you say it just barely meets I guess the criteria for the traffic, would that be something that, if you know at this point that signal would be put in from the very beginning, or would it wait until the Welcome Center is?
It could be implemented as part of the project. It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's our goal,
Okay.
but that's part of the discussion with TxDOT.
Right.
Did you get a feel from the president at what the deadline was on or not deadline, but a projected date on the visitor?
I think they're still waiting on some funding determinations out of Austin, and so I think it all hinges on that.
I just wonder if you had heard anything more than that. I haven't either.
I have not.
Further questions?
Looks like
Again, thank you all for your time and information. We do appreciate it.
Glad to do it.
All right. Thank you.
Invitation.
If there is nothing else, this meeting is adjourned
I show 7:03.
at 7:03.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you for the upgrade on the radio. Appreciate it.